Hello, welcome to Behind the Data with CloverDX. I'm Matthew Stibbe, your host, and I'm here with David Howell, who is Director of IT and Digital Transformation at Chugai Europe. Hello, David. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, good morning. How are you?
I'm grand, thank you. I'm good. And you?
Yep, very well.
So before we start exploring your career and the world of data at Chugai, I'd like to start with just what is going on in the world of data that's recently happening, new technology, new ideas that are exciting you at the moment.
Well, I think like most people, everybody's talking about AI and machine learning. It's the big buzzwords. You can't even, look at any sort of product literature, go to trade shows, webinars, whatever it is. Everyone's talking about AI and, machine learning, and this is what it's going to transform the world. And we've already seen that, in many of probably the ways that we live today, Amazon Alexa or Siri, all those kind of things. And it's even moving forward at probably a far more accelerated rate now than it was, when it first started 30 years ago.
Well, I didn't think twice before this interview of going to ChatGPT and say, how do I pronounce Chugai, as in Chugai Pharmaceuticals? And it came back and it told me, and I hope I think it was right from what you said. So it's sort of starting to pervade our world. But do you think there's any risks or anything that data professionals need to be mindful of?
I think really it's just getting that guarantee or that certainty on what it's been trained on. As I said, there's some really, from personal experience, there's some really good use cases, like you just said, in terms of how do I pronounce Chugai. But also, I've seen some quite wild and wacky responses, again, depending on the prompts, depending on, the information that you ask it from. But again, also really, as I said, what it's been trained on. Because we've had recent examples of Google Bard referencing things like Reddit, and some of the responses are, not ideal. So I think there's a real risk. But again, it's no new, or it's no different to what we had with Google. For example, if it's indexing a website and it's presenting the facts back and you read it, again, it all comes down to the person taking that knowledge. If you go to a library, it's probably more guaranteed that the information is correct because it's been curated, it's been reviewed, it's been peer reviewed. You don't have that on the internet. So again, I think it really comes down to the information that you train it with.
It's like the dying history professor telling his devoted students his last words: verify your sources, verify your sources.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Chugai, and particularly Chugai Europe. Tell me about your world.
So we are we're a pharmaceutical company. We're headquartered in Japan. So we've got a long heritage. We're 100 years old next year. We operate across Europe. There's about 180 people, and we're across UK, France, and Germany. There's two parts of our business. One is clinical development, and the second one is commercial and sort of sales marketing type activities.
And tell me a little bit about your role there.
So I've been at Chugai for 24 years now. I head up IT and digital transformation. Digital transformation is new. That started this year in January, officially. And the real scope and role of that expansion is to try and look at solving some of our business challenges using digital transformation. So part of that is machine learning, AI, all underpinned by good, strong data management.
Can we explore a little bit some of those challenges and sort of / opportunities that you're trying to solve? What do you think the biggest payoff for digital transformation will be for Chugai?
I think it's really around simplification, efficiencies, and automation. I think probably like a lot of organizations of a similar size, we're kind of probably considered small organization. We've got lots of information across the business, spreadsheets, emails. It's just everywhere. But the challenge with that is it means that we can't make accurate, timely, informed decisions. So we've already been on a journey to establish things like data warehousing and reporting and dashboarding off of those. And we've got some automation of our data sources. But really, that's where we need to focus more. It's preventing or reducing the amount of effort that people need to do to generate these insights.
And you're about 180 people in Europe, is that right?
Yeah, across Europe, yeah.
And this is not medical or pharmaceutical information. This is just regular business data, sort of CRMs and
information.
things.
So it comes from, we've got various sources. So things like warehouse information. So how much product have we sold? So how many medicines have we sold? Through to, could be HR data. It could be, could be activity in our CRM or our marketing automation tool. Website traffic, all that kind of thing.
And can we do a little bit of a name check of the kinds of systems that you've got? I think you mentioned Salesforce. What else is in the stack there?
So Salesforce is our CRM. We also use Marketo for digital marketing. We've got, most of our data source comes in from things like Excel. We've got third-party information that comes from our, we're part of the Roche group as well. So we get some information from theirs, and they use things like Tableau, and, they've got their own data warehouse, and they use some pretty big tools like Snowflake and some other bits and pieces. But, for us here in Europe, we're more around, a fairly traditional data warehouse, I would say. I refer to it as a data puddle rather than a data lake.
It's a data shed, not a data warehouse, right?
Exactly. I mean, maybe a small warehouse.
Data garage.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for the size of organisation we've got, I think we're on the right journey anyway.
And can you give me a couple of examples of what you would like to see happening when you started to join these things up and move the data around intelligently?
So we've been using, we started primarily with Microsoft SQL, and we've had this over a number of years. I mean, I've worked in Chugai for 24 years, and we've probably used SQL for most of that time that I've been here. Some systems, they're very discrete. Finance systems don't really talk to CRM systems. So our plan really was to have a central data warehouse where we could start to, bring in that information into a single space. I think really for me, it's having that roadmap, that clarity, and the prioritization of what data sources are most important and where do we go get them.
So, and that data warehouse will be in SQL Server?
It is, yeah.
And when you're starting to do all of this, can you give me some a sort of a vision of what data nirvana looks like for you, where you're headed towards? What will people in the organization be able to do that they can't do today?
So I think for us, it's really important there's a couple of things to this. I mean, we made a load of mistakes when we first started with, things like naming conventions and all the technical stuff, like, how do you differentiate tables and where they come from, and, the challenges of, view sprawl, and, we have test data in with production. So there's a whole, we didn't get it right to start with. But I think going forward, it's really about that clarity. For me, data nirvana is having a central set of information that anybody in the business can use, subject to, obviously, need to know basis, but, having that information in one place that's of high data quality. Because again, just because you can automate and bring information into a warehouse doesn't mean it's good data. And that's one of the things that we've been working through on our, our journey so far, is working with different parts of the business to say, hey, this information's not complete or it's not accurate. But again, for me, it's also getting the management buy-in. So getting the leadership team to sponsor good quality data and seeing what the benefits are, because I can't give them access to meaningful data from a Power BI dashboard or whatever we might use. They make a decision on that and then not have confidence and reliability of the information that they're using.
There's quite a few things I want to unpack in that.
Yes.
Can we start with naming conventions? I'm fascinated by that. What have you learned about naming conventions that you're going to apply from now on?
I mean, we've done it relatively simply. So, for example, take Salesforce, for example. We've got multiple instances of Salesforce production sandbox. So, again, we generally use the object name. So we'll go crm.prod.accounts or crm.prod. So at least we can distinguish. Where it's fallen down is we've gone and done some temporary data where we brought in, a quick data set. So, for example, an updated customer list. And then the data management, hasn't been that great. So, 2 months later, it's still there. So again, it's the housekeeping and keeping on top of things. But we've got a limited number of data engineers at Chugai, so it's not a huge problem. But yeah, we need to get better at that.
So you don't need to legislate the taxonomy so much as just make sure everyone has a shared understanding of how to do it.
We are. That's purely one of the lessons that we've learned, because when we then come to look at migrating to a new warehouse, what information is needed. I think one of the challenges that we picked up recently is around things like, because obviously we've got SQL databases and tables and views. Actually, where are they not only coming from, but where are they going to? So, for example, in Power BI, where we've got multiple dashboards with multiple reports, actually, which one is driving which report? So if we make a change to one, what is the downstream impact? And if we change a source system like CRM and we add a new object that we need to bring in, how does that impact the existing tables and databases? And so it's quite, I think it's not overly complicated, but it's just you need to have some rules.
You need to model or recall or remember where those data sources are and what the downstream, so that you can do you can manage the knock-on effects of change.
Yeah, I think it's just configuration documents. I mean, I work in IT. I hate documenting stuff. I'm not I'm not great at that.
IT people are just slightly better than salespeople at doing their documentation, right? Just
slightly maybe. But no, it is important. It's like, when you code, you've got to put comments in, because otherwise you go back to it 6 months later and you can't remember what that function does or what that part does. So yeah, it's important. But again, we share it with other people that aren't data engineers. So the guys in the business that do the business insights, they need to understand how we present the information. And again, when we have conversations and we're looking at bringing in new source systems to the warehouse, again, we can understand from them specifically what fields are important to them, what do they want to see in their views, so they can build their analytical dashboards based on the information that we're presenting. And, likewise, if we need to do any transformations, if we need to do any, other processing on that data, again, it's important to know that.
So configuration files, configuration management, and naming conventions are a really important part of data quality. But what else has an impact on data quality? What are you learning about that?
Users.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Essentially, yeah. And flagging that early, because we had a couple of incidents where might have to do annual reporting for legislative reasons or regulatory reasons, and then we get to the end of the year, run the report, and we find that we're missing some key information. So again, looking at trying to automate that throughout the year, so maybe sort of weekly reports or whatever. So again, we can flag it and say, we're missing this piece of information for this particular record. Can we go back and find it at the time? Because it's a lot easier asking the person that's just submitted it than going back in a year's time and saying, look, you've done 3 reports last January and you're missing, customer ID or something. So again, that is something that we're looking to sort of strengthen our data quality and data management.
And the third thing I wanted to pick out from what you said earlier was management buy-in and getting them invested in data quality and data integration. Can you tell me a challenge that you've had to work with around getting that, and what did you do to sort of bring management on board for this?
So, there's quite a few things, but as I said, we're looking at our digital transformation strategy. So, AI, machine learning, all needs data. So we need to feed it with good quality data. Management buy-in is really important because it takes effort, and you need people to be on board to say, I need you to spend extra time to make sure that the information is accurate, it's correct, and it's complete. If we don't do that, then any of the other benefits that we'll get from using some of these new tools and technologies won't exist, or it'll be in limited capacity, or worst case, it will be factually incorrect. And that goes back with all sorts of even common data reporting and analytics. If you're missing records or they're not complete, you're not going to get the full picture at the end. So I think convincing people just how important having the right data, and again, there's things we can do, like, make mandatory fields, we can make drop-down lists, we can do certain, data checking and, on the user input side. But yeah, it needs everybody's buy-in. And, I think leadership teams, certainly here at Chugai, they're quite supportive that we have the right, we have the right data, because it is now starting to drive business decisions.
And that, I mean, that user experience, user interface design to make sure that you get the good data in, for, using drop downs rather than text fields, for example. Are there tools or processes you can use to really look at that part of the journey?
Well, we've kind of probably done it retrospectively because we've looked at where we've got the data quality issues and then gone back and fixed it. So I think going forward, it's just planning that. So when you launch new systems, or whether it's a finance system, whether it's a sales marketing system, again, it's just understanding where your potential data risks are. And for some points, it might not be. Having drop down lists are also limiting because for example, if you've got a free text box, now you can glean quite a lot of information from having that text and running it through, natural language processing. Whereas, a drop down box, it's either A, B, or C, or it's yes, no, or there's pros and cons to both. But again, it depends what the output is.
Do you think we might be? This thought just occurred to me. We might be at the verge of, thanks to ChatGPT and large language models, the tyranny of structured data might be broken. In other words, you could just run unstructured text data and go, okay, tell me what countries, or I've got 5,000 records in here, and everyone's typed in United States, US, USA, and you go to ChatGPT, just normalize that data for me.
I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. I don't know how it would integrate in part of the pipeline or the process. One of the things that we've also worked on, I've got a colleague who's a data scientist. He's been looking at sort of probability matching. So we will get some text fields like first name, last name, for example, and it will look at connotation. So like, for example, David versus Dave. And then we'll come up with a probability of matching that.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? If you could do a kind of deduplication is something I deal a lot with. For example, of contact names in CRMs. And if you would go, okay, Dave Howell, David Howell, and they both got Chugai. Okay, that, but not on a deterministic basis, but actually sort of probabilistic based on information it might have about you in the system.
And that's what we're looking at the moment, because we've got some, matching systems. And but there's still going to be a human involved to make the final decision at the moment. Because we're literally doing it as a proof of concept. But I think there'll come a point where once you've proven that the process works and it's a reliable, and again, it will come back to iterative training and looking at the outputs. But again, it's data quality. You mentioned it before. It's like, with ChatGPT, you can get an output, but you need to have confidence that it's giving you the right information and it's reliable. But as I said, you get the same with Google. You type in a search, depending on your search query, you'll get probably the first three and you think they're fact. It's what we've been trained, because we built that confidence over 20 years.
Yes. Google is never going to come back and say to you, I don't know about that. It's just going to give you an answer. I mean, okay, I suppose you can put some search queries in that get no answer, but they're not going to be meaningful searches. And being able to rely on the data, being able to rely on the answer just because it's giving you one. When I was a very young computer games designer, I had a dot matrix printer and I had a laser printer, and I was used to do the first draft of proposals on the dot matrix printer because it looked a bit scrappier and crappier, so that when the client gave me feedback on something and I did it on the laser printer and it looked really sharp and really good, they kind of had a perception of improved quality, but there wasn't actually any particular improvement. It was just the better output. And I think there's a lot of these systems can persuade us or convince us that they're right just by looking good or giving well structured or reasonable sounding answers. Doesn't mean they're right.
I think you still need to be a subject matter expert. Even there's claims that it's going to replace doctors and it's going to replace lawyers and these highly skilled professionals. At the end of the day, you're still going to probably need that person to. It might accelerate the way they can make decisions, but I think you're going to still rely on, certainly for the next 5-10 years minimum, somebody to actually sit there and make the call, because they need to be accountable.
Yes.
OpenAI, they're not going to be accountable for you in court, are they? Or
there's a very good reason why they put the disclaimer on every output, right? It might not be correct. I'm back in the day when I used to write for quite big American magazines. They had teams of fact checkers. So you'd write something, and I remember I interviewed somebody at the German embassy about something. They rang him up and said, "Did you actually say this? And did you say that?" And that discipline, that rigor is going to become very valuable. Anyway, interesting, but let's come to a specific project that you've worked on and explore that together. So can you give me an example of a digital transformation project using sort of connecting systems that you've worked on, and what? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so probably the most recent one that I've worked on is actually using CloverDX. And we've got two systems. So I mentioned Salesforce and Marketo earlier. So we've got CRM system and we've got a digital marketing automation platform, so Marketo. The challenge that we've got in our CRM, we're using a CRM that's been configured by a vendor, and everything is an account. The challenge that we have when we integrate with Marketo is they're expecting contacts as people. So CRM is configured so we have a contact object for everybody, but all of the updates, all of the fields are driven on the account. So it's got a personal account and it's got what you would traditionally think of as an account, like a company, maybe a hospital or wherever else, however you'd carve up the NHS in, say, the UK. The problem with this is when we're trying to collect email addresses or consent for people, that information is stored on the account object and not the contact. So yes, accounts will flow through to Marketo, but it's not expecting that to be the transactional account. It's the contact or the person at the account is the person that we're going to be using within the marketing tool. So what we had to do, or what we've done with CloverDX, is we've built a fairly cool program that will basically look at all the accounts in CRM that have got an email address. It will then bring back the account object values. It will then compare it with the contact object values, and it will work out whether or not an update for consent was done specifically in Salesforce, or it's been updated in Marketo, and then that value has flowed and updated the local contact value in CRM. So again, we're using various things we're using our warehouse to compare against previous value, and it will decide which consent value is the most accurate and up to date. And this has been, pivotal, because without this, we couldn't have launched our marketing automation tool, which is a huge, strategically important project for us at Chugai. The other thing is we're processing this on a 5-minute schedule. So again, without us using CloverDX, there's no way we could have really automated this to the same level of customer experience that we've got. So if someone goes into CRM, change the value, we send them an email within 5 minutes. Previously, we might do it on a daily batch file or something like that. So again, if you've spoken to one of our sales representatives and said, "Can I, have permission to send you marketing emails?" and they say, "Yeah, here's my email address," and then a day later you receive an email saying, "Oh, thank you for opting in," it doesn't look particularly professional. So again, it's really helped us, but it gives us that confidence. So when we look at things like our responsibility towards GDPR, we can be 100% sure that we are capturing consent, it's reliable, and again, we've done thorough testing. So we've got that assurance and accountability that actually...
consistent across multiple systems, so you're not still being sent emails from one thing but not the other one or something like that.
Exactly. And one of the other challenges were, even if our consent database primarily lives in Marketo, because our CRM system, at the time, if it hadn't been updated, they could log into CRM, see, oh, I've got marketing consent because it hasn't acted, or the opt-out hasn't been acted on. Then they start sending some emails from Outlook or another third-party tool. And again, that really is not where we want to be from a data quality perspective. We need to make sure that all of our systems are streamlined and synchronized.
What was the biggest thing you learned from that integration project?
Understanding probably the problem. Probably the first thing, and then understanding, technically how the two systems work, what fields they're looking at, what the synchronization time between them, and then, I've done application development, software development before, so it's relatively, once you've got that mindset, it's quite easy to come up with a solution. But yeah, for me, that was probably, it was quite an easy thing to solve in CloverDX once I'd got understanding of what the problem was and what the issue was. And we did it quite a lot of dummy testing, and we did it in sandbox before we launched into production and things like that. So again, it was not a particularly long project. It took us a couple of weeks, but something that, without that tool, we wouldn't have been able to deliver it.
Understanding the problem is always the hard bit, I think. If you can easily solve the wrong problem very efficiently.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but I'd like to ask you one final question before we wrap up. If you had one tip based on your experience to share with somebody who is starting out on a data integration project, what would it be?
I think for me, I've used multiple tools over the years. It's really around getting the right tool to fit what you're looking to do. I think I'll talk very briefly about CloverDX because I've just mentioned it. But when we were on the market looking for a new ETL tool, I wanted something that was powerful enough to do what I wanted. But again, I could start to use it quite quickly. For me, it wasn't as intuitive as some of the tools on the market. But for me, really, once I got the support from CloverDX and we started to build some of these automations, actually, I really understood the power of the tool. And some of the extensibility. So we're doing some stuff with Python. We're doing some stuff with, third-party Java connectors and some stuff like that. So for me, it's understanding what you're trying to achieve. If you just want to connect two systems together, you could use something like Zapier, or you can use. There's a whole load of really simple tools that will connect the source system to a destination. But when you want to build some things like the marketing automation synchronization, where you need to do logic, you need to do proper transformation, that's when you need a tool that will stand up to that. And I think just for me is the flexibility of the tool.
Yeah. Chainsaw's a powerful tool if you learn to use it safely and well, right? You can't get the same result with the Swiss Army knife. At least I can't in my garden. Thank you for mentioning Clover. That was very sweet. And that brings this episode to a close. If you'd like to get more practical insights about data and data engineering, learn more about CloverDX, please visit cloverdx.com behind the data. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.